Hi, my name is Finya. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm talking about books that are regarded as classic literature and that are very accessible and kind of easy to read, and for me at least a great introduction to the classic world of literature, because books that are regarded as classics are super different and they range from very easy to read and very accessible to very long and very complex and very intimidating, I feel like. And if you get the wrong book as, your first gateway into the classic world, then I think it will put you off to reading more classic. And I have curated a list for you today that is just a bunch of books that are super easy to read, but super good and also very enjoyable. So the first book is 1984 by George Orwell. This is one of, the most classic dystopian novels out there, along with Brave New World and Handmaid's Tale, I would say. And I think this is the easiest to read. I think Brave New World was also pretty easy, but I think this just is exactly what you want from a dystopian novel. And, it's regarded one of the best novels of all time, and I stand by it. So what is it about? 1984 is about a society that lives under totalitarian rule from the government, where they basically manipulate every aspect of your life, including your own thoughts, through propaganda, through surveillance, and everywhere you are, basically someone is listening or watching you, and watching if you step out of line. And we follow this character who is called Winston, and basically we follow his life, and through his eyes we kind of see how society is and how bad it can become. And we follow his life and his own intrusive thoughts and his own longing for rebellion and for freedom. And yes, we follow his journey, and it is a great read. I don't think it's necessarily plot twisty. I think you can guess from the very beginning what will happen in this book, kind of, I would say, or kind of the message of it, but it's still super exciting. It will hook you from the very beginning. And yeah, let me read the first line to you. It's also iconic. Part 1, Chapter 1. It was a bright cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Alone, that sentence, I think, for me at least, makes so much sense and gives you so much about the rest of the book, because first of all, it's a bright cold day in April, which is, for me, sounds very sterile and cold, but also lacking of passion and lacking of love and lacking of a sense of a welcoming society, I would say. But also the clocks were striking 13. I think for me, living in Germany, where we use the 24-hour system regarding the clock, so we would say 16 o'clock as well as 4 o'clock, but I think written obviously by an American, George Orwell, 13 o'clock is very military speak, because usually you use 10 p.m. and 10 a.m., but you would only use the 24-hour system in like the military service to be more precise. And I think that's kind of what the book is also about a military regime, about rules and order, and everything has to precise and the way it's supposed to be. So I think that's a fantastic first line of book, and yes, go read it. It's an easy read, it's not many pages, and yeah, go for it. Next up, I have Animal Farm, also by George Orwell. Those are two very different books, but they have kind of, the same messages, I would say. Animal Farm is very short, and it's about a farm where the farm animals can talk to each other, they can speak, and they one night decide to overthrow the farmer, who's obviously, using the animals for his own purpose, and they overthrow him. And when he's gone, they kind of put up their own society to instill freedom and equality among them. But what is happening is that kind of the same structures that they were before kind of now take over and build up within their farm of animals. And it's kind of a satire on the Russian Revolution, where it was replaced by the Soviet regime, and kind of the same structures were replacing the old structures, and everything was back to normal. And that is a very interesting read, because obviously you have farm animals talking each other and suddenly, you know, governing this farm. But it's also very, very interesting how, you know, those same structures kind of creep their way back into their life, and you have the same types of people and the same type, you know, of leaders, the one that put the other animals down, and you kind of see all the same stereotypes that you have in the human world than in the animal world. And it's just a super quick and easy read because it's super short. I have it somewhere on my shelf, but I just don't know where right now. But yeah, it was very entertaining and exciting for me. At least I had a lot of fun with it. Next up is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I know a lot of people talk about this book, but I think it should be on that list. I hear everyone talking about it when it comes to classic, or when it comes to dark academia, when it's really not dark academia, but I get why it kind of fits the vibe. So the book is about a man called Dorian Gray who has his portrait made and makes a deal that he doesn't age, but the portrait ages for him, and not only shows his real age, but his moral corruption and inner decay, kind of. And yeah, we follow Dorian, and we also follow the painter of the portrait, and it's a very interesting but also very beautifully written read. Let me read you a couple lines. Okay, the first one is: there are many things that we would throw away if we were not afraid that others might pick them up. I love this quote so much. This one as well. I want the dead lovers of the world to hear our laughter and grow sad. What's in those lines? Is it meth? I don't know. The writing is so addictive. Oh, this one is also very beautiful. If this girl can give a soul to those who have lived without one, if she can create the sense of beauty in people whose lives have been sordid and ugly, if she can strip them of their selfishness and lend them tears for sorrows that are not their own, she is worthy of all your adoration, worthy of the adoration of the world. And further down, the gods made Sybil Vane for you. This one sentence, the gods made Sybil Vane, or like the gods made someone for you. That's just the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Oh my god, I can't stop reading. Her body swayed while she danced, as a plant sways in the water. The curves of her throat were the curves of a white lily. Her hands seemed to be made of cool ivory. Come on. Okay, that's enough. I have to put this book down. It's great. Go read it. Ooh, then I have Notes from Underground by Dostoevsky. This book is so good and it's so interesting, and I think it's worth reading 3, 4, or 5 times because the writing is so exquisite and abstract and weird. And yeah, well, let me tell you what it's about. So basically, this book is about a bitter, cynic man who kind of writes this memoir almost about his life and his very contradictory feelings and thoughts about the world and about society. And he's criticizing society, but he's also criticizing himself and the world, and he basically is not a positive thought in his head once in his lifetime. But it's such a good read, and his thoughts are so delicate and interesting. I don't know how to describe it really, and I can't really read you a passage from this because I read it in German, and this is the German edition, but it's just so good. I will maybe put up some quote up here, or I don't know, go read it. Read the first page. The first page tells you a lot about, you know, the rest of the book, and I think it's a great introduction to Dostoevsky if you don't want to read, you know, Crime and Punishment and longer books like his that are more popular maybe, but super intimidating. I think Crime and Punishment has like 800, 900 pages, and most of his works do, but I think this is a very great introduction. This is a very unique structure of a book. If you want to have a more linear and intuitive structure to a novel, I would advise you to read The Gambler by Dostoevsky. I will get it. This is my edition, and this was also very fun. This is basically about a man who is, you know, a gambler. He's addicted to gambling, and he also falls in love with a woman who coincidentally has the same name as a woman Dostoevsky loved. And also he was writing this book to pay his gambling debts. So it's kind of an ironic book to write, to be honest, but it's super fun. It really makes you feel like you are the one who has an addiction problem. I don't know, because in those scenes where he describes gambling, I was so interested and I wanted to get up and go gambling. But then in the next scene where you can see like the, obviously, the problems and the downfall of gambling, I was like, okay, shit, no, that's not what I'm going to do. But every scene was so vital and engaging, and I love how he describes people and how he describes, you know, also like conflicts and problems like that. And I think it's a fantastic read as well. If you don't want to read Notes from Underground, if it's not maybe your cup of tea, this is a very good, normal, linear book. Then we have My Baby Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I loved reading this book. I mean, everyone knows that book, but I didn't actually know what it was about. I thought it was about a dude who built this monster called Frankenstein. I thought the monster was called Frankenstein, and basically he is evil and he hates people and he kind of goes around murdering. That's what I thought it was about, so it didn't really catch me to read it, but I did, and it turns out it's about completely different things than I thought. So first of all, the scientist is called Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein, and he does build this monster. Basically, he refers to it as monster, obviously because he builds it from body parts, which is kind of, I don't know, it's a weird thing to do. But what this book is really about, that we have this creature which suddenly sees the world and explores the world, and he doesn't know what to do. It's basically seeing a baby or a child discover feelings and people and love and friendship. Basically what the book is about, that he escapes when he first wakes up and he discovers or like watches this family that live in a small house together, and they see you know, love between the two parents, they see friendship, they see, you know, the siblings and their bond, and they watch this family, and there's nothing in this world that he wants more to have that and on his own. But obviously everyone takes one look at him and say he's disgusting, he's a monster, and basically hates him. Basically he wants Victor Frankenstein, the scientist, to make him a wife and to make him a partner, so they can just, you know, go off into the woods, bother no one, but also have this bond that he wants nothing more than anything else. And those chapters where he was watching this family and discovering those beautiful feelings were so, I'm tearing up right now because it was just so beautiful to read. And he's right. And it also, the book is about what hatred coming towards you can also do to you. Yeah, that is a very good study on also like bullying and that kind of, you know, hateful culture of hate, and what can it do to a person or to a monster. Then we have The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which is a French author, or was a French author. And this is, I think, the most sold book of all time, when you don't count the religious works. I think actually it's up there, but a lot of people bought this, and it's my favorite book of all time, I think, along with others. But it's this beautiful story about a prince who lives on a very small asteroid right here. It's a very small asteroid, and he lives on there, and one day he, you know, starts exploring other planets, and, you know, we follow his journey of talking to other people on their small planets, but he also comes to Earth, and he lands in the desert where a pilot has crashed with his plane, and he tries to basically reassemble it so he can get home. And then he meets this prince, and they have a lot of conversations. And I think almost every page in this book I have annotated, and I have also given 2 copies where I just read the book, annotated it, and I've given that to friends of mine, to like 2 of my favorite people. And because I think it's just one of the most enjoyable reads there are. Like, no book gives me so much joy and hope and inner peace than The Little Prince. And it's kind of marketed as a children's book, but it's not really. It's kind of a children's book for adults. And it also, you know, he talks about it in the first couple of pages of the book, that it's basically that adults are sometimes, you know, forgetting about the little magic and the little miracles of this world, and children can still see them. And I think that is a very good lesson just for life. And there's so many quotes in here. I would think I will look some up still. Okay, I think this is one of the most popular quotes. And now here's my secret, a very simple secret. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. That is very pretty. It is the time you have wasted for your rose that makes your rose so important. The writing is so good, and every page has a quote that you can put on a cup of tea, you know, and it's ridiculous. And there's so many more, and I can't read you all, but yeah, go read The Little Prince. It's super short, it reads like a children's book, but it gives you so much. Next up, we have 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This was probably the most intense reading experience I've ever had. I fell in love with this book while reading it. It was difficult, definitely. It was not the most easy read because it's basically a multi-generational saga of this one family, the Buendia family, in a fictional town called Macondo. And so it's about a lot of generations in this family, and a lot of people, especially men, have the same names. So you come, okay, wait, which guy is that actually? But you know, you get at some point there are also like family trees on the internet. But it is the genre magical realism. So there's stuff that happens that cannot happen the way it does. But in the book, it's just so swiftly implemented into the story that you kind of read over it and then you wait, this cannot happen. But it's so beautifully written, and it's such a fantastic first page of a book, and it's a fantastic last page of a book, and everything between just ties it so well together. The history of this town called Macondo has a lot of parallels to the history of Colombia, where Marquez is from. I cannot tell you more about that, but I've heard about it, and if you're interested in history, you can, you know, look that up. But this is just beautiful. It is exquisite writing. I don't even know, my father gave it to me because he loves Marquez and his works, but this is still the only book I've read from him. I have a lot of in my shelf, but I remember that it was also a long and kind of difficult read. So I'm kind of intimidated to go more, but I also want to reread this because it was so damn good. Like in the end, I just sat there for like half an hour, silent, staring into the nothingness because I was so moved by the ending and about, you know, the whole thing. Also, Nobel Prize winner, and yeah, great writing and great book. I don't think I can get away with making this video without, you know, having one of this author's works in my video, and that is Shakespeare. And of course, Romeo and Juliet is, you know, my pick for that, because it's a story that everyone knows. You know, everyone knows about, you know, the two feuding families and Romeo and Juliet from those families that fall in love, and you know, it ends in a tragedy. I think everyone knows kind of the plot of Romeo and Juliet and this play, so I think it will be a very easy introduction into Shakespeare. If you have not read any of his plays, I think this is where you should start. And this was also my first Shakespeare play, and it was surprisingly good actually. It's so relevant, like all of his plays are still so relevant and funny and relatable to this day, and I don't know how he did it, but I just love Shakespeare and his writing, and you can really get into it. There are a lot of different editions out there. I just got those Pelican Shakespeare editions, so these are the one they all kind of share the same structure of cover. So black is for tragedies, then this light blue is for the comedies, and then the sonnets, I think, yellow, and they don't have a lot of notes on the text or explanations in there. I don't read it anywhere. I would advise you to go on Spark Notes and just look the play up and then read some analysis out there. I started reading this where I just read one chapter, and then after that I read the analysis on SparkNotes on the chapter, and then I kept reading to fully understand everything, because the language is hard at first, and especially for someone who's not native in English. I am German, but I still read it in English to kind of get the same Shakespeare words that he put on the page. But yeah, it was sometimes hard to get what he was saying. But I think when you get in the flow and kind of start to more comprehend the gist or the message of, a monologue or whatever, it doesn't matter if you don't understand what every exact word means, although this also has a lot of footnotes. So yeah, I am going with this edition. And last but not least is The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I think that's how you pronounce it. This book, I think everyone should read it at least once in their lifetime. It's super short, and it's basically about a prophet who imparts wisdom on many different aspects of life to the people who ask for it. He's basically in one city, and the people ask him, "Oh, what about this? Oh, what about this?" And he basically, gives them some wisdom on it in his thoughts before leaving. So we have just a lot of small chapters, and it says, "Oh, on love, or on friendship, or on parenting," and he basically, gives you the wisdom. And I think everything he writes in this is wise. You know what I mean? I just loved what he had to say, and I loved reading it, and it's, I think, a very important work. And also, Khalil Gibran he's perfect. I have not read a lot of him, but for example, Broken Wings is the love story, I think. His writing in that book is beautiful, but The Prophet is, I think, the way to go if you want to get into Gibran. But also, if you're not gonna read any other works of his, read this book. Read it. It's very good. It's super short, and it's definitely worth your time. So that was it. That was my pick of classics to kind of, get you going. And yeah, I hope it was helpful, and thanks for watching, and have a great day. Bye.